Stock of the day, thought we'd take a look at Nanosonics. Update today. It is confession season at the moment. You sort of feel like running a clip of Game of Thrones when the nuns ring the bell going, shame, shame, as you walk through the streets. Well, Nanosonics has really shamed its investors today. Missing sales guidance for the first 6 months to December, after total revenue fell over 2%, just shy of $80 million. Looking ahead, company sees revenue growth in the second half, with half-year profit before tax expected to come in just shy of $5 million. So you can just see that big drop today on the back of it, down to $2.88. It's dropped about a third today. Henry Jennings, what do you think of the update?
Well, it was a down date, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Let's face it. Somewhat disappointing.
Yeah.
I guess it puts an awful lot of companies on notice, not that they can do much about it because the numbers are the numbers, let's face it, but a 41% drop to $2.88. I mean, that is huge. That is an earthquake in terms of the Nanosonics share price. It did miss. Margins were down, gross margins 79.7, expenses were up. Everything that should have been up was down. Profit before tax was down to 4.9 million. So nothing was particularly good about the numbers, but 41%.
Yeah.
I mean, the question, I guess, if you're a shareholder, what do you do from here?
Yeah. What do you do? What would you do?
Well, that's a tricky one. I don't think I'd be selling it if I was a shareholder. 41% down. It could get worse. There would be downgrades to come. The numbers did come out last night. They were out at 5:15 last night. So we have seen some downgrades already today. But the price targets they've downgraded to are still massively above where they are now. So you get the feeling that these guys have been savaged. It's still pretty thin and quietish out there. I know that we're supposed to all be back at work, but I think our heads are still on the beach to some extent. So I think this one has got a little bit overdone. If you're a long-term believer in the Trophon story and the US expansion, clearly there's some timing issues and some of their sales have been affected by pullbacks in spending in the US, then I think I'd be nibbling away at this. $2.88, it's most of the price targets now are $3.40, $3.50 sort of thing, even after this downgrade, but it wasn't good. And it does send a shudder, I guess, through the market in terms of if you do not disappoint, if you disappoint in earnings season, this is what happens. You get absolutely savaged. We saw it the other day with Liontown, with the funding package. We've now seen it with Nanosonics. Do not disappoint out there. Or if you do, you've got to find some good news to try and sugarcoat it a little bit, because otherwise the market really does take no prisoners. But I'd be sort of starting to accumulate.
So you'd accumulate it?
Well, it's still
fundamentally a good company.
It's fundamentally a good company with a good product. They're making progress. Timing is an issue.
Okay. So what it does is has a machine that disinfects surgical instruments, does it in hospitals, and it's sort of a cabinet, you stick it in and it disinfects.
It's like popping something in the microwave, really, and it kills all the germs. So it's been very successful in the US, but clearly not successful.
Down to a 5-year low today on the back of this.
I would be probably nibbling away here, $2.88. I think there's long-term value there.
Okay, Andrew?
Koshi, an easy one to start with. I appreciate that. Thank you. Look, from my point of view, I agree with Henry. The only point of difference is probably the timing. So, and Henry and I have spoken over the years about, the 3-day rule. It takes 3 days for good or bad news to wash through a company, really. And I mean, with due respect to Nanosonics, releasing something after market yesterday, 5:15. I mean, it wasn't Friday, but after market, it's probably a little bit. Anyway, from my point of view, I think there's probably at least another day of pain coming whilst we see some more downgrades filter on through. Plus, even mums and dads coming home tonight going, "Oh bother." It is a family-friendly show after all. Oh bother! What has happened to Nanosonics? I just need to sell. So I'm a buyer, but I'd probably wait till either tomorrow or more likely Monday, because of course Friday being a public holiday. And by that stage, hopefully most of the bad news is washed out. You may not be getting it as cheaply. Certainly Henry's buy today, you could be potentially getting it cheap, but I suspect there's a touch more of the downgrades to come on through. It's a quality business, but to Henry's point, confession season is brutal. and the market is not buying the hockey stick story of a big recovery in the second half. So it's a buy, but just give it a couple of days.
Okay, but then others on the call would say you never buy in a downgrade cycle. So this is the start of a downgrade cycle. You wait until the first upgrade or beat.
Yeah, and I guess we probably should preface as to how your other, good-looking hosts are pitching it. They may be long-term accumulators. Without trying to speak for Henry, I would suspect it's probably he and I are probably a little bit more tactically focused.
Right.
If you can pick it up at 280 and then it bounces back to 340, back to consensus, and you take your 20%, and that's fantastic. Whereas, if you're longer term accumulators, sure, you'd want to see it sort of turn around. But again, we'll give Nanosonics the benefit of the doubt. They're saying that it'll all turn around in the second half. And so potentially this is the bottom of the downgrade cycle. But in my particular case, this wouldn't be a longer term hold. This is just being opportunistic. Baby's being thrown out with the bathwater, down 41%. Just wait for it to bottom. Close to bottoming, so wait a couple of days, back to consensus, take my 20% in, a month, 6 weeks, whatever it is. Thanks very much.
Yep. Henry, do you get into anything during confession season? Or do you wait until they confess? Because who would have seen this coming? If you thought of Nanosonics 2 days ago, it was pretty good company. They're whack.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one that's ever really appealed to me,
right?
Mainly because the price the market was putting on it and that growth.
But are you wary at this time of year, though?
Yeah, always. Right. I mean, the key is always capital preservation.
Yep.
The key is to try and avoid the landmines. And if you've got a diversified portfolio, you're gonna cop it every now and then with a landmine. Something's going to go off. Even a blue chip comes out with a shock, or some news comes out that shocks the market. There's black swans everywhere. The question, I guess, is how you react to that downgrade or even an upgrade if you're short. I mean, let's not forget some people are
RPM
short.
Global came out today and shut the lights out.
Exactly. So, it's how you react, where you go from there. And of course, Andrew's right with the 3-day thing. It does take a little while to wash out. We're on day 2 effectively, because at least we've seen the downgrades from the analysts. Sneaking it out at 5:15 last night as if no one's going to notice it. Well, that's never a good look. That looks like you're trying to hide something. But 41%. I mean, everything has a price. Let's face it. Yes. Everything has a price, and it's a question of whether you, as an investor, see long-term value at 288, or whether you're going to worry about the next 2 days or whatever. Just depends on your time frame. Clearly, they've got some issues upgrading from Trophon 1 to Trophon 2. That's not happening as quickly. At the end of the day, I guess if you're sterilising medical instruments, if Trophon 1 does the job, why do you need one that does it just that little bit better? It's like upgrading your phone. I mean, I'm an iPhone 8 guy, and it still works like a phone. It's just great. But then I look at the Samsung one and the new one, and it looks fantastic, and you think, I should get one of those.
But
it's $2,000 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
All right.